Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Tulsi Rao. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your nice introduction of me. I obtained my doctorate in wildlife from the Karta University. I worked in the Forest Service, Forest Department in the combined state for 40 years continuously. I completed my work in wildlife as a wildlife in the wildlife career 12 years in ex situ conservation and 18 long years in situ conservation. As seen from the previous delegate's speech, I think mostly I'll be presenting my work of my case studies on both ex situ and in situ conservation. Okay, so we all know that the resources on these planets are very finite, not infinite, and they're fast depleting because of our unthoughtful actions on this planet and also high consumption beyond the levels of its resilience. So therefore, we are facing all these problems. I think I don't need to explain all these things because it's not relevant to the our topic. Directly coming to the topic, because we are running short of time. So conservation is nothing but the preservation or the efficient use of resources. When I talk about the resource is all panchabhutas. What all we are getting in kind from this planet for the betterment of our lives, these are all resources. So therefore, the conservation of various quantities which are under physical laws, they are also part of the conservation. So conservation of nature, conservation of wildlife, conservation of water, soil, and so on and so forth. These are all very important resources of our planet. Coming to the conservation, there are two types. One is in situ conservation, the other is ex situ. When I say the ex situ conservation, with respect to the plants, like sacred groves, home gardens, and seed banks, field gene banks, cryopreservation, and also botanical gardens, arboreta, zoological gardens, aquaria, etc. All these things. Coming to the in situ conservation, conservation of the species, both flora and fauna. Under protected area network, we have the sacred groves, sacred lakes, we have the biosphere reserves, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and all these things come under these things. Under biosphere reserves, we have the terrestrial ecosystems and marine ecosystems. So we need to conserve the different plant and animal species, both in situ and ex situ conservation. When I say the in situ conservation, for the plant conservation, under in situ we have the tree diversity, different types of trees, different types of ecosystems, different types of vegetational patterns we have, not only in the country, for the entire world I'm talking. And ex situ, under ex situ we have the germplasm, seed banks, and all these things, and also living plants. And both in situ and ex situ, we have common is the research and also development of horticulture and education and creation of awareness to the public. Coming to the in situ conservation, this is nothing but on-site conservation of species within their natural habitats, like protecting the tigers in its own landscape, in its own habitat. So take for an example, Tiger Project, both in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, is the Nagarjuna Sagar Srisaram Tiger Reserve, Amravati Tiger Reserve. Previously, it used to be one. So that is a on-site conservation of the tigers. And exhibiting the tigers in the zoological park and breeding them and supporting the in situ conservation by rear and release of these animals, that comes under the ex situ conservation. In situ conservation, this is the most viable way of biodiversity conservation. When I say the viable way, because the habitat is the known habitat to the animals or species, they come from the same habitat, so they feel comfortable in that habitat. But whereas in ex situ conservation, it is an artificial one, and mostly we take only the threatened or endangered species of animals or plants from their natural habitat and place them in a special settings in gardens or in the nurseries or in the zoological parks for protection, and also provide with the for conditions for the natural growth. And conservation of genetic resources is also come under the in situ conservation, and like examples are national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, gene sanctuaries. These are some of the things. The merits of ex situ conservation survival is survival increased due to the special care and attention. The mortality will be reduced, natality will be increased. The longer lifespan, the animals get it, the assured food, because of the assured food, water, shelter, and security. But whereas in natural conditions, food is not assured. The animals have to hunt, or the herbivores they will have to search for the preferred species of the grazing and all these things. The limitations for ex situ conservation is it's an expensive. It needs huge budgets for providing feed, providing cages, and providing environment. And freedom of the wildlife is limited because the space is the crunch, and animals cannot survive in natural environment because those cannot survive in natural environment. They are brought to here and they will be raised here and adapted only for a few selected species, this ex situ conservation. Therefore, these are some of the limitations for the artificial rearing of the animals in the ex situ conservation. Example of in situ conservation, take for example, Andhra Pradesh has got long coastline. For that matter, the whole India has got about 7,000 kilometers of long coastline. Many of this marine fauna, especially like turtles, marine turtles, they come ashore, lay eggs, and after hatching, the young ones, they go back into the seas. So, therefore, it acts as the sea coast acts as an in situ conservation habitat for the sea turtles. So, what you are seeing here in the bottom, left corner bottom, the marine turtles, olive ridleys, they come to the shore, lay the eggs, and cover them, and leave the place, and they will not bother for the protection of the nest. So, because the mother or parental guardianship is not there, so these eggs are susceptible for the lots of damages. Maybe because of the beach erosion, at times dredging by the for the constructions, and in the beach area, the excessive lighting because of the tourism, and people go for the fishing. So those animals which come for the nesting are automatically come into the fishing nets, and there are umpteen number of natural predators also there, like dogs, mongoose, veredas, and even birds also. And people also go for the sand mining, and all the pollution, drainage that come and meet the ocean, that pollute the ocean, and all these things. These are some of the problems the natural species are facing. So therefore, what we are doing, because these beaches are not protected by any kind of parks, therefore what we are doing, now we are collecting the eggs and keeping in a small fenced areas, and looking after that till they hatch and release them back into the waters. Coming to the another very important ecosystems of Andhra Pradesh is the grassland ecosystem. We find the Great Indian Bustard, highly endangered bird of the world. Great Indian Bustard is a highly endangered bird of the world because this is restricted only to the India and Pakistan. And the number, previously it used to be about 50,000 birds used to hover in the Indian skies in uh, during our freedom movement. Now the population has dwindled as low as about less than 100 individuals. Then imagine if these things they get extinct, then what will happen? Because these are the friends of the farmers, they pick up the insects from the crops, and thus it helps the farmers. That's why it is called the friend of the farmer. It is an indicator species of the dry grassland areas, and many birds from the Siberia they come for the come as a winter migrants to these areas, and they stay over the here and lay the eggs and lay the nest, and after hatching they leave the young ones for their survival and they go back to their original places. So these birds they graze here, and after some time they also leave to the place from where the parents had come there. And this very is one of the very important ecosystems, but unfortunately people think that this is not a productive ecosystem, and there is no tree growth, not much tree growth is available. Therefore, the lands are being given as a patas for the construction to all these things. That's one of the dangerous situation. Nowadays, because of the scarcity of the land, people are plowing for the croplands and all these things. That's how most of the ecosystems in the country they're suffering. So thus the habitat is lost for these animals. And another very important ecosystem is estuarine ecosystem, where the mangroves they profusely come in the where the rivers they meet the oceans. So these mangroves they protect the shore area from the cyclonic storms and even from tsunamis. During 2004 tsunami, this coastline, especially AP coastline, is protected only because of this mangrove forest. And therefore, the concept of the protected area has come into existence throughout the world. So, a protected area is a clearly defined geographical space, recognized, dedicated, and managed through local or other effective means to achieve the long-term conservation of nature with associated ecosystems, services, and cultural values. So now you look at this map down. This is South Africa. So South Africa is a large country in the southernmost tip of the African continent. What you are seeing, the green places, these are all protected area. That's the Kruger National Park. There are some of these protected areas are shown as green this thing. Therefore, these are clearly defined geographical space. We cannot allot the more area for this thing because people are using the other areas. So this protected area concept has come into existence. So as you see here, these are the green areas are protected areas, mostly the green forests and ecosystems of the world. And 1993, about 168 countries they became the signatories for the Convention of Biological Diversity. So one of the goal of this CBD convention was each nation should protect at least 17% of its land area under protected area network and 10% of its coastal and oceanic area of 10% at least. So that's how now the different countries of the world they're trying to bring a lot of area under protected area network systems. As of today, about 2 lakh protected areas covering 19.8 million square kilometers area, which comes to about 15% of the Earth's surface, is brought under the protected area network system. So coming to India, we have 104 national parks and 551 sanctuaries and about 88 conservation reserves and 127 community reserves and our totally we have about 870 plus protected area systems now we have in India, apart from the UNESCO designated protected area for World Heritage Sites. So coming to the conservation of forest and wildlife, we have the biosphere reserves concept, national park concept, wildlife sanctuary concepts, and these are the some of the national parks. They are there in different parts of the country in different states. That you can look into this map in all the states. There are apart from these things, there are about 50 plus tiger reserves in the country in all the states, and these tiger projects are governed by the Project Tiger by the National Tiger Conservation Authority, and India is the home for about 80% of tigers in the world. In 2006, there are only 1,411 tigers used to be there, and slowly the population has been increased because of the conservation projects of the country, and now there are about more than 3,000 tigers in 2019 now. The uh, India has played a major role in the increase of the population of the tigers of the world. And wild tigers globally rose from about 3,159 in 2010 to about 3,890 in 2016, and also now they're slowly increasing. And coming to the biosphere reserves have been identified as preserves for the increase of the wildlife population and development of the uh, tribal uh, tribal areas and protecting the genetic source resources of the domestic plants and animals. And it also helps in conservation of both plant and animal habitats, promotes the economic development of the people living over there, and also it aims at the scientific research and monitoring and education of the people on the conservation related aspects. Wildlife sanctuaries, these are the areas where animals are protected from the disturbance because of the habitat destruction and all these things, killing, capturing of animals. So they are all strictly prohibited from these areas. And along with that, we have the bird populations where these birds are, especially the wetland areas, are protected by the uh, by constituting the Ramsar sites. Ramsar is a place in Iran where this wetland conference was taken place, and since then these sites, the wetland sites which have been constituted, are called as the Ramsar sites. We have certain Ramsar sites in the country. These are shown in this map. And there are certain regulations with respect to the protected areas, both for national parks and sanctuaries, as per the Indian Forest Act 1927 and Conservation Act 1980. And there are other acts also, Environmental Protection Act 1986, Biological Diversity Act 2002. Of course, India has a constituted about 2003, and the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Developers Act 2006. These protect these conservation areas. These are some of the issues of the our protected areas: habitat loss, fragmentation of the corridors, overuse, abuse of the biomass resources because of the biotic pressures from the cattle and from the humans, and increased human and wildlife conflicts, and severe livelihood dependency on forest and wildlife resources, and continued poaching of wild animals and also wild plants, and illegal trade in wildlife areas, and it needs a broad-based public support. Unless public cooperate, I think we cannot protect our wild heritage. So there are other institutions for ex situ conservation, National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, we call it in short, we call it NBPGR, that preserves agriculture and horticulture crops, and National Bureau of Animal Genetic Resources that preserves the semen of domesticated the bovine animals, and National Facility for Plant Tissue Culture Repositories, conservation of varieties of crop plants or tree by the tissue culture. And also we have the gene banks, a collection of DNA samples together with the samples of the somatic materials, and gene banks preserves the stocks of both seed and vegetative materials. There are some major gene banks in the country, as I told already. National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, New Delhi, Tropical Botanical Garden Research Institute for Medicinal Plants and Species, Central Institute of Medical and Aromatic Plants in Lucknow, Central Drug Research Institute in Lucknow. These are some of these things. They are primarily considered as the conservation of the genetic material. In practice, germplasm is a plant part of the new from which new plants can be generated. Applications are tissue culture and cryopreservation. These are the some of the things done in the germplasm banks. And also we have certain research stations available. From the forest department point of view, we have established a research institute known as Biodiversity Eco Research and Monitoring Laboratories in Nalmalais, in Sundipenta, in the Srisalem. A wonderful research station has been established. Even the CBD, Convention of Biological Diversity, headquarters in Montreal in Canada, they rated this institution. This is the only one and one, is only one for the whole of the world in the wilderness, and they rated it as one of the very important research institutions for study of the biosystematics, that is inventorization of the plant resources and also animal resources, and also ecotechnology. There's a lot of science and technology available in the nature. What all we discovered, what all we have invented, they're not invention, they're all discoveries from the nature. So nature is a big laboratory. It gives us lots of clues as to why, as to how we can develop the technological advancements of all our discoveries and all these things. And also it studies of the ecological economics and bioprospecting studies, because so far we are unable to extract the economy from the natural resources, especially from the forest and wildlife. So this also we used to study here, and also ethno-medical botanical studies. Lot of medicinal plants are there. We have identified about more than 353 medicinal trees, plants, and herbs in this Nalamalais through our studies. And also we have bioinformatics. We have developed softwares and all these things, and documented a lot of scientific reports, and developed a database. And we have the conservation biology, and also designed certain biodiversity management plannings, all these things. And we have given lots of guidance to the nation, to the region, and also to the nation. And lots of the other scientists from different institutions, they come and work here. They used to work here and take a lot of database. And also we have done a lot of research on tiger conservation, tiger movement, and also habitat development conditions, all these things. It's a in situ conservation research has taken place, and a lot of database has been collected, and a lot of survey has been done, and different species have been inventorized. And to our credit, we have discovered new species to the Nalamalais, Eastern Ghats, Southern India, to the India, and also to the world. We have discovered, identified, and named them also. So these are some of the invertebrate species, especially the spider species. So these are contributing lots of services to the farmers by putting down all these insects. They consume the insects. Otherwise, all these insects come and destroy the crops and all these things. I'm running because of running short of time. I'm running through the slides. And also, there used to be severe man-animal conflicts, and people. I think now Telangana is also facing the tigers. Recently, one man has been killed by the tiger, and the predators, most of these predators, especially the panthers, coming into the urban areas, and they're strayed because certain conditions are lost and habitat conditions are deteriorated. So we capture those animals and release them back into the wild and minimize the man-animal conflict. And those animals which are cooperating, we have evolved certain methods and strategies by which we have translocated about 6,000 black buck from the crop predating areas to their natural habitats. And this is the first of its kind for the whole of the world, without using any uh, invasive or technological, like using of dart guns we have not used. And actually, in other areas in US and advanced countries in Africa, people used to capture these animals by using helicopters. But we have designed a strategy and a native technology by which we have could able to capture 6,000 animals and translocate it safely with less than 1% mortality, because we involve the local people for the capturing operation also. So therefore, technology is readily available, and other states like Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra also adapted our technology. Is a lot of things are there to tell about all the how the technology has been evolved and all these things. It takes a lot of time, and also a lot of these star tortoise are being smuggled to the Southeast Asian countries, and we used to seize them in the airports and ports, and used to bring them back to the protected areas, and injected the transponders, and we released them back into the wild, and we used to monitor these animals whether they're surveying well or not. And all before that, we have done an extensive survey whether the food sufficient food plants are available or not. And when the food plants are available and the habitats are identified, release them back into the wild. And also, we made the local villages as the custodians of these things. And it's very one of the very successful program, conservation program. Also, we have done an excellent and a successful conservation program of crocodiles. During 1970s, all the three species of crocodiles were at the verge of extinction, and we collected the eggs from different parts of the country, right, starting from the border to the Nepal, and collected eggs, and from Godavari, Krishna, Ganga, Kaveri, and we collected the eggs, and we have artificially incubated them in the ex situ conservation, and after attaining the age of 1 meter size, and we release them back into the rivers and also in the coastal areas, and restocked all the rivers. Originally, they used to support the population. Now they have been restocked, and now the population is abundant in the country. That's another very successful project we have launched it. So, because of our intervention through the protected area network and through the certain projects, the forest cover has been improved, and there is a better accessibility and accessibility for the forest dwellers, and forest cover has been improved, water availability increased, and those animals which has vacated from the habitat again started visiting the areas, and also conduct a lot of attitudinal workshops, seminars, trainings to the local people, bring a lot of change, attitudinal changes to the people, and we made them the custodians of these things, and also improved the habitat of the tigers and also other species, and manipulated the habitat conditions, developed the meadows and pasture lands, increased the soil moisture regime of the habitat by constructing the check dams, link up the existing drainage pattern to the lakes, and also the water harvesting by constructing water harvesting structures, constructed low investment percolation tanks, prevented the runoff and reduction the human dependency and the natural resources, and improved the socio-economic conditions of the local people by from the funding available from the World Bank, and also promoted limited ecotourism in the areas. Because of our interventions through different projects, the population of tigers have increased. Once the population has drastically declined, now the population is in the increasing trend. Now it is evident that the tigers and panthers are seen everywhere in the protected areas. And also, we have not neglected the outside protected area, and we have taken the advantage of the national the remote sensing and GIS database, and identified water thirsty areas, and those areas which have been built as ponds for irrigation by the Nizams. Now they have been dried up because of the destruction of the canals, feeder canals, and we have again repaired all the feeder canals, and after renovation and repairs, now the feeder canals are working well, and after rains, the precipitation is coming as through this feeder canal and filling up all the water ponds in these areas. And now people used to uh, raise their crops using this water from the ponds, because Telangana areas, I mean in Amrapad plateau, people could not able to go for the cropping because of the lack of the water. So for 10 years, they went to the MPs, ministers, they complained against the district administration, but nothing could be done for these people for 1 decade. And because of the intervention by the uh, Tiger Project, we could able to find out the real problem of the people, and we could able to construct check dams lavishly at different places, by involving the local people using the technology. And now all the ponds are recharged, and people started raising the crops. And those areas which are with rocks and uneven grounds, they have been brought to the irrigation conditions, and developed lots of these areas. Irrigation, but the potential of irrigation has been improved, and we have developed a software for handling the database. And so also the population of tigers increased. People may ask, why should at all we protect these tigers, or for that matter, why should we protect these apex animals, especially the carnivores? These are the indicator species of an ecosystem, whether the ecosystem is in a healthy condition or not. Say, like us, suppose you are suffering from some kind of disease, you go to the doctor conduct lots of tests, and then you design the treatment, and we will undergo the treatment, and then will be treated. So also in the nature, we don't have that kind of doctors available. So there should be some mechanism by which we should measure the healthiness of the ecosystem. These are the species which indicates whether the development of this population indicates that the prey species of these animals are increasing. The prey species, the population increasing the prey species, that means the sufficient fodder and vegetation is available for these things. When the vegetation is increasing, that means the groundwater potential is plentifully available. So thus it indicates the healthiness, wealthy of the that natural resources available in that region. So that's how we have the protecting mechanism, different protecting mechanism, and also conducted several classes to the poachers, especially the tree fellers. We developed a package called Conservation Holistic Education. This package is also known as the Psychological Transformation through Conservation Holistic Education. That is a Paryavarana Vyasana section Dwara Manasika Jagriti Karan, and these people, they have become a strong conservationist, much better than the so-called conservationists in the departments. And we took these people to different conservation sites and got them habituated the different best practices available for their own development. And also we have developed a mobile van in which we have depicted the conservation priorities of the region, and taken to the different villages, conducted to the different sections of the people, and that's how we have conducted thousands of training classes over a period of 10 years, and also improved tourism. This is an Amrabat side. A lot of tourism potential is available without any invasive methods. I think just by showing our destination, showing our scenic panoramas, I think the local people can earn a lot of money. Thus, without destroying the natural beauty, natural aesthetics, natural resources, I think a lot of money can be invited into these areas. So the results are the increased income of the locals, increased well-being of the people, increased food security of the tribals, more sustainable use of the natural resources, and decreased vulnerability of the people. And other key results are once the degraded habitats restored back because the resilience capacity of the habitats are increased, village tanks are improved to support the irrigation facilities of the area, and that increase the crop yield, besides providing agricultural employment to the local people for 9 months, and smuggling routes in the village have been plugged, animal population increased, and the empowerment of the villages has been done, and gender participation, it was insisted, and socio-economic improvement was done for the locally dependent people, and increased anticipation for the people's participation. So that's how, over a period of time, 10 years, we worked very hard, and the habitats have been improved, and the population has been the population of different animal species have been improved, and the people living in the protected areas now, they're a little bit happy of the intervention of the projects. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Because of the paucity of time, I run through the slides, and I'm sorry if any doubts are there. You are welcome. Thank you.
Sir, one participant has asked a question: why biodiversity areas are located in selected places? Why hotspots are established at selected places?
Yes. See, uh, three-fourths of this planet is in the oceans. Only one-fourth of land is available for the people to live on. Okay. Even within this one-fourth area, now we are seeing lots of civil wars are taking place world over, for the acquisition of land. Lot of aggressions are taking places, fightings are taking place between the countries because of the paucity of the land. See, once you go on declaring the entire land areas under protected area network, what happens? Lots of man-animal conflicts take place. Already you are seeing the animals are coming into the urban areas and into the villages, and people are killing these animals. They are putting a lot of pressures on the protected area managers. See, once the man-animal conflict starts, what happens? People more for the destruction of the habitats. That's how in the initial days the tiger project was, the habitat was lost because of the severe man-animal conflict. Because the people, the interests of the people are also taken care. Now people could able to understood the importance of the network of the protected areas. We cannot go on declaring every area as a national park or a sanctuary. We can do that, but that invites lots of problems for people and also from the politicians.